Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Disc Connected. I am here with somebody that I've been waiting multiple months to finally have on here, and this is Billy Ray Brewton, and this is going to sound a lot like me because he has a list of titles. First off, he hosts the Incinerator Pod, which is a podcast that I also produce. We'll be talking more about that later, I'm sure. But possibly the biggest time taker, I'm sure, for his life. He is the managing director at the $3 Bill Cinema in Seattle. Yeah. He's the founder and artistic director of Scripps Gone Wild, which many of you have probably heard of already. And then he's also the festival director of the Skyline Indie Film Festival, and now something called Make Believe Seattle. How you doing, Billy Ray?
Doing pretty swell, Ryan. How the hell are you?
Doing fantastic.
Wait, is this an NSFW channel?
Always.
Always. Fuck yeah. Awesome. Okay. I like to let loose and not have to think about the kiddies.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can let loose as we want. And that's going to be the point with a lot of this stuff, because Scripps Gone Wild gets wild. Incinerator Pod is full of drama. But some of these film festivals are some of the exciting things that I really want to dive into today.
Sure.
But I mean, first off, let's break down you as a person before we break down each of these jobs. What got you into film originally?
Oh my God. Well, what got me to film originally was a bicycle. Because I used to come home from school every day, ride my bicycle to the Rosalie Plaza video store, and I would stick around for 2 or 3 hours. I would put the VHS boxes back on the shelves for Mike, who ran the video store, and then he would let me take 2 or 3 movies home every night. Then I would ride my bike back home, and I would just watch movies until, I was done for. And either I was ready to go to bed or my parents made me go to bed one. And so that's when I got obsessed with movies. That was at a very, very young age, probably 5 or 6.
That's a pretty fair trade.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did that for years through high school. I would do that because it was a small town, small video store. So Mike, he didn't need employees. He ran it himself, but it was nice when it was busy to have someone there to put the boxes back up. But that was sort of it. I was always more of a writer than anything else. When I was younger, I wrote a lot. But it was very much just like, write something and then pass it around in 3rd grade to all your classmates. And that's what I would do. I would literally write something. I would pass it around to the entire class, and they would all write notes about what they thought of it on the back pages. And so that was kind of my gateway. And the older I got, obviously, the more I became a cinephile. And but I think what most people don't realize is that I was much more of a theater person than I was a film person for a long time. Like I ran a theater company in Birmingham for a little over a decade. And I still consider that I've probably done more theater than film on the whole, but film's where my heart's at.
You can hear when you start talking about theater work that it holds a special place for you, and it really comes across as you discuss it. So it's always nice to hear you break out of that shell from film and dive into some of the theater work.
Thank you. Yeah, I love theater. I really, really do. And I go back to it a lot. Like, when I left Birmingham, I was burnt out, frankly. Like, I had basically been a one-man band at my theater for 8 years, and I was just burnt out. And so when I moved to LA, I just really didn't want to do anything with theater. But then about 4 or 5 years, once I was there, I started missing it again. So I started doing Hollywood Fringe Festival shows, did a couple shows there that did really, really well. We actually took one to Off-Broadway in New York. Wow. And and I'm looking to get back to theater again soon, hopefully, too. In Seattle, maybe. But, like I said, I oscillate. I go film, theater. I think I'll always do both.
Well, I mean, you just mentioned Seattle. You moved up there during the pandemic, right? It was fairly recently.
Yeah, it was actually July of last year. So we're just over the 1 year point. I packed up and moved from Beverly, not to Beverly. It was during the pandemic. I was like a lot of people. I was doing the whole, like, am I happy where I am? Like, is this where I see my life in the next 10 years? And the answer was, at the time, no. And so I was like, where do you want to move? And so I literally narrowed it down to Austin, Denver, or Seattle. And within 48 hours of looking for a job, this job came to me. And so it was just, it kind of felt like kismet a little bit. And I'm leaning over to grab something. Come here, buddy.
Billy Ray also has some fairly new. Is it 1 or 2 puppies?
Yeah, that was me getting something out of my Basenji's mouth. that he was chewing with that he was going to choke to death on. As I look at him, and he looks very confused as to why I took this ball bearing out of his mouth.
It was a betrayal.
And I'm also like, why is there a ball bearing in my apartment? I'm not that guy. This isn't a fucking garage. But anywho, moved to Seattle on a whim. Honestly, very glad that I did. I mean, the weather is certainly more appropriate for the way that I like to live. And I just love the city. Seattle's a great city. Will I stay here forever? Who the fuck knows? But right now it's working.
So pretty happy in the last year. Have you been able to feel fairly acclimated since then?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I got 2 dogs, so that was an investment.
Right.
So that's definitely changed the way I live my life. But I mean, have I done as much in the city as I want to? No. But I do blame the dogs for a lot of that.
Well, and we're also still in a pandemic, literally.
Yeah. I mean, that's been part of it too. Seattle took the lockdown really seriously and still probably take it more seriously than a lot of places. And so that sort of made getting out a little bit challenging too. But no, love the city, love the people here. Wish there was less crime, but hey, it's America.
That's a great point. Seattle been in the news a lot over the last few years, but I still see it as a place that I would absolutely love to be in. For how long? That could be a week. It could be a couple of years. But I thought I'd still never seen Seattle, so I'd love to see it someday. You got this long list of titles. Let's break each of these down.
Too many titles.
First off, for those that haven't heard, they've been living under a rock. What is Scripps Gone Wild?
Well, Scripps Gone Wild is a script reading, but also drinking game. So basically, we choose a popular film script. We assemble a bunch of like celebrities and actors and things together. We read the script, but it's also a drinking game. So if people mess up, they take a drink. We have some rules and stuff in there too that also trip folks up. And each one benefits a different charity. And we've been doing this. We started it at the Chattanooga Film Festival back in 2017. No, wait. 2017. We started back Chattanooga Film Festival. Once I moved back to LA, we started doing pretty regular live shows at El Cid. Of course, the pandemic threw us for a loop, so we started doing virtual reads, but that was actually a blessing in disguise because we were really able to expand our base of folks. We were able to like really increase our audience. And so we just returned to our first live show in almost 3 years. We just did Creep Show at El Cid. It was a sold out house, did really, really well. Looking forward to a lot more coming up, some live shows, because as great as the virtual reads are, and I will say we do have a virtual read coming up at Skyline Indie Film Festival, September the 7th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You don't have to be in Virginia for that one. You can check it out. Go to skylineindiefilmfest.org.
What a master at plugging there. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I like to have my information succinctly on my tongue.
That link will be in the description below, of course. But with Scripps Gone Wild, are there any names that have been involved that some people might recognize?
Oh, sure. Joel McHale's done one with us. Patrick Fabian from Better Call Saul, Diedrich Bader, who most folks know from Drew Carey's show. Perez Hilton has done one. For the horror fans, we've had Barbara Crampton, Danielle Harris, Kane Hodder. So many people. A lot of really cool people. Mink Stoll, Lorraine Newman, like just all sorts of crazy folks have been on there. We just did Creep Show. We had Barbara Crampton. We had Jonah Ray. Really fun group. We try to make it a good mix of like celebrities, influencers, just actors who we think are really fun and we want to do it with. Like we try to create a really cool mix of people with the show, and we've got a pretty good stable and roster of folks who do them pretty regularly with us that are second to none, frankly.
The community around Scripps Gone Wild has been wonderful to witness, and you can tell even like the Twitter replies after this last Creep Show reading, just everybody was so glad to have you back. So I'm just glad to see you back doing something you love like this, and meeting people in person, and hopefully making people laugh as always.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always been the goal. Like we just want to go be ridiculous for a couple hours and raise some money for charity, and like that's it. So if we do that, we're successful.
So Scripps Gone Wild, obviously, most of the time is in person or virtual, and you got to be somewhere at a certain time or in a physical location. But If anybody else wants to see you or hear you, we got the Incinerator podcast that we can listen to every couple of weeks. And I can't wait to hear what the elevator pitch is about this show. So why don't we explain what the Incinerator pod is to all of the viewers?
So Incinerator is a subverted movie elimination game where guest takes turns sending films from a list of 25 into something we call the Incinerator, where those films have varying amounts of damage inflicting upon them, meaning that some films may be wiped from your memory, some films may not. Like it varies. And then we have a lot of stumbling blocks that we call landmines, which kind of fuck up the players along the way. It's basically just chaos in podcast form. I kid you not. We were playing Dune, the board game, which is usually known as the most complicated board game ever created. And I said, boy, this would be fun to do as a podcast.
Yep.
And that's literally how it came about. It went from Dune, the board game, to the Incinerator podcast. It's loosely inspired by a couple of other podcasts, Screen Drafts, which I'm on a lot, and then Film Spotting, which is one of, if not my favorite film podcast. And so both of those were kind of merged together to create the Incinerator, respectfully, because we love both of those podcasts. And yeah, I mean, that it's kind of just chaotic. It's chaotic and fun and wild and very enjoyable.
There have been some wonderful guests that have a background in some of the films. There have been really great topics. I mean, we just talked about 90s action films recently. We've got one of your first episodes was best stage to screen adaptations, which for a lot of people, that is one of the blind spots, because not a lot of those are being made nowadays. So they are just behind. And hearing people that are so knowledgeable on a subject just go ham, and not just pitching why one film is better than the other, but why these 25 films that we're talking about are all amazing and deserve a legacy, but now you have to sacrifice them. It creates this mystifying drama that is wonderful. And to be completely transparent, you have a brilliant producer who is me, and I am honored to be a part of it. I am stoked that I was asked to come on. I still don't understand why I was selected, but I adore being involved with you, and you are a wonderful person. So thank you for putting your voice out into the world.
Well, thank you, and back at you, sir. And it's been lovely working with you.
I'm glad to hear that, but you've got some bigger things that are affecting some maybe marginalized segments of society. You are bringing art into the world for some we'll say themes that doesn't get enough of a nice fair shake nowadays. It's getting more than it used to, for sure. But first off, the $3 Bill Cinema in Seattle. What is that?
Sure. So $3 Bill Cinema is a sort of it's 27-year-old. It's a sort of a institution in the city of Seattle. It is the largest queer film organization in the Pacific Northwest. It is, I believe, the third largest queer film festival in the U.S.
Wow.
And we do a host of events throughout the year. Our flagship is Seattle Queer Film Festival, which is an 11-day film festival in October. We also do Translations, which is a trans film festival that we do in May. We're one of the only trans film festivals in the world. We also do a summer camp we also do a summer camp for queer youth. We do outdoor cinema in the summer. Like, we stay pretty busy throughout the year with stuff. And, Seattle Queer Film Festival, like I said, is sort of our big flagship event. It's actually coming up. That's what we're spending all of our time sort of invested in right now. We actually have just announced our gala screenings for that, which is really exciting. And it's an awesome organization. It does really good work here in Seattle, and I feel really lucky that they thought I was the right person to come and sort of helm this bitch. I love it here, and I think we're really doing important work in Seattle, and folks seem to be enjoying it as well.
So for anybody that might be interested in that and possibly inspired by the type of thing that you're working in, what exactly would you say your role is through $3 Bill?
Sure. So I oversee all of $3 Bill Cinema. So I'm the managing director, which for all intents and purposes is executive director. It's just the difference in title. I basically make sure the ship is sailing smoothly. I do a lot of grant writing. It's just always something I've had a bit of a knack for. So I stepped up to do that when I came in, because the organization had never really invested in grant writing in a substantive way. And I knew we were just missing out on a ton of money you know, from granting organizations. So I do a lot of that. It's managing the day-to-day, keeping the books balanced. I mean, I'm not an accountant. We have one of those, but I kind of spearhead that. You know, a lot of creative stuff too, and just coming up with screenings and events and things like that. Like a little bit of everything, frankly. We're a pretty small team. We have 4 full-time staff members, myself included, and we have a festival director who's seasonal, who actually runs SQFF. So a very small team, but we get along great and make it happen pretty well, I think.
Nice. We're going to talk more about that creative side in just a minute, but the other 2 things that we had brought up there were the festival director of Skyline Indie Film Festival and Make Believe Seattle. Let's break each of those down.
Sure. Well, Skyline Indie Film Festival it's a tiny film festival in Winchester, Virginia. I became familiar with them a few years ago. My best friend who used to produce Incinerator Podcast, which now Ryan produces, he has a relationship. He's from Winchester, Virginia. And so he knew the Skyline Indie folks. And I produced a short film that he was in that played at Skyline. That was my introduction to them. I just thought it was such a cool community to have a film festival. And, you know, they had been around for a while, but still weren't getting the kind of audiences that I thought they deserved. And so I sort of offered last year to come in as a co-festival director. So I am co-festival director, technically. Brian Patrick, who founded the festival, is my cohort there, who's amazing. And Brian's a great guy. And I've been happy to sort of jump in there and program and kind of help create some cool stuff for Skyline. Because I do think it's just such a unique area. And I think it's a perfect place to have a film festival. I think it's just getting the word out there and the consistency and all of that. And so, yeah, I actually fly out Wednesday of next week for that festival. So it's the 8th through the 11th. We've got some really cool films this year for folks who might be around that area. We're opening with 5/22/77, which for folks who have been following it, was shot in 2004.
Yeah.
And it's Patrick Reed Johnson's sort of labor of love that is finally getting a physical release in October. And so we're doing that as our opening night film. Our buddy Graham Skipper's film, The Leech, is going to be our closing night film. But we've got a lot of cool stuff in between as well. We're doing a field trip to Dinosaur Land. We're doing a live screen drafts, a virtual screen drafts, a virtual Scripps Gone Wild. Should be a lot of fun. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, 8th through the 11th. I would encourage folks to check it out. It's virtual as well. So if you're in the Virginia area, but you're like, I can't quite make it to Winchester, you can catch it out virtually. Not the whole program isn't available virtually, but there's some really good stuff on there. So
yeah, a lot of these film festivals that have done virtual, they've adapted fairly well, but obviously with rights and stuff, there's a lot of
distributors are cracking down on what they're allowing to be available virtually, more so than we had hoped. We had hoped that maybe, and I think a lot of festivals had hoped that maybe the studios would start embracing it more. Right. I'd always thought that, I was like, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. They're going to go back to their old model as soon as they can. And it seems like they have for the most part, which is unfortunate. But at the same time, like, as someone who believes in the theatrical experience, I also understand it to a degree. So,
and then fairly recently, I believe, what is Make Believe Seattle?
Make Believe Seattle is probably the thing I'm most excited about right now. And you know, as soon as I moved to Seattle and sort of got a lay of the land in terms of like, what are the film festivals? What are all the things that are available to the community? It became very aware to me that there was a discernible lack of genre content. Not that you couldn't find genre films playing, but there wasn't really a genre festival, and no offense if there is one that I just did not come across, but there's not one that has certainly made any waves. And, you know, as someone who has been really involved in genre festivals, who goes to Fantastic Fest every year, who's a horror nut, I've always wanted to start one, and this just felt like the right time. It felt like this was a part of the country that needed one. And so we're planning it for March 2023, March 16th through the 19th. We're going to do screenings at 2 or 3 different venues in Capitol Hill.
Nice.
We're planning some really amazing events and some crazy awesome guests that are going to be coming into town for that. We're really trying to blow the roof off of it for the first year. So call for entries just open. So if you're a filmmaker and you have anything that we can call genre, whether it's horror, sci-fi, animation, anime, martial arts, whatever, like you can submit it, Film Freeway / or just go to makebelieveseattle.com and you can just submit your film there. We have 3 categories. We have short films, we have feature films, and we actually added a mid-length section, which a lot of festivals don't. Most like I don't know of any other festival that does it, honestly, but should be doing it because mid-length films have become a big thing the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I would honestly say since the birth of mumblecore, they've started becoming a really big thing. And our definition of that is any film between 35 and 70 minutes. And I'll be honest, over half of what's been submitted to us thus far has been mid-length films, which is really exciting. Wow. That tells me that there is a need for that out there, and I hope to see more festivals follow suit with that. So, I'm getting really excited about it. I don't have a lot I can say about it because we're still, it's in early stage. Yeah, but we have our venues booked. We have our call for entries open. We're starting to book our guests and our films, and so. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So even if you're not in Seattle, I think there are worse ways to waste your money than to come on up and have some fun with us for a few days.
There is no easy way to say this next sentence without sounding like I'm sucking up to my boss or anything. But the amount of impact that things like this can have on communities across, whether it be a geographical area or a segment of people who have some random thing in common, whether that be loving cult and genre films or being a part of the trans community, it is something that can genuinely unite a segment of people in ways that is really difficult to do otherwise. And it seems like one of the most creative and necessary ways to do these when it comes to film festivals is in surrounding programming. For anybody that doesn't just, they hear the word programming, in your mind, like, how do you define that? And what do you think is something that separates good programming from bad programming?
I think it's the curator. But it begins and ends with the curator. And I think we've entered a time now where people have really started getting back into the idea of curation. I mean, even if you look at like the streaming services, which may seem like it's just a bunch of like titles dumped on there, there is amount of attention and to detail that goes into what they're curating. And I especially think of places like Hulu or Mubi or things like that. Like, you want somebody whose voice you trust. Right. And to me, the best film festivals out there are the ones that have like a really strong sort of authorial voice. And especially when it comes to genre content. I think people have this idea that genre is such a niche thing, but it's so not. Like, there are genre fans, massive amounts of genre fans all over the country, whether they're in big cities like Seattle or Austin, or where they're in little tiny communities. And like, my experience has been that the most amazing film festivals are usually the ones that spring up in places where you would not imagine there a film festival to be. Right. And you think about places like Telluride, or you think about even Fantastic Fest back when it started in Austin was kind of like what. So I think it's all about who is curating and about whether or not they are taking a holistic approach to their programming. And everybody's idea of genre is different. I know mine is very different from a lot of other people's. Like, even the films that we're already toying with doing screenings of, I'm like, these are never films that you would see a place like Fantastic Fest play, right, or like Fright Fest or something like that. But they certainly are genre films. And so I would say with Make Believe, I feel like part of it is like, I feel like a lot of cinephiles feel unwelcome at places like Fantastic Fest and Fright Fest and like places like that. They feel like it's a place for horror fans, or it's a place for like, they don't feel like it's a place for them. I'm trying to do that a little differently with mine. I want it to be a place where folks who love Fantastic Fest can feel just as home as folks who love something like Telluride, where you're going to get a good mix of stuff. And I'm all about the mix. I'm all about making sure there's something for everybody, but that it all fits in with whatever theme we're going for that year. And hopefully I'll be successful. I've been programming for over 15 years now. I hope I do a good job of it. I figure if I didn't do a good job, I wouldn't still be doing it. But yeah, I hope, people are definitely going to get a sense of what my tastes are by what's being played at this festival. I've got other folks who are helping me program, so it's not just me. Like, I definitely wanted to bring in other voices and like not just other voices, but other experiences and people from different backgrounds who can, who have maybe, different outlook on things than I do as, a cis white guy from the South. I like having other voices in the room, but you're definitely going to get a good sense of my taste from it for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And on a small scale, programming for me, like you can literally call programming when somebody asks you for a movie recommendation and you are giving them something that could fit their taste. And to me, one of the most important things is knowing who that person is, but then adapting that to a large scale for something like one of these festivals. It literally translates to knowing your audience, and you
Yeah.
have to know
Yeah.
what you are wanting to draw in there. So, you just said you've been programming for 15 years. Can you think back to something that you programmed yourself, and maybe name a couple films that we would recognize that played concurrently or part of a string of films that you think that was a really great set of programming, and maybe why that translated so well?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, and that I don't think about nearly enough. I think it'd be easier, which will it does not skirt your question, but I think it'd be easier to talk about the programs as a whole that I feel proudest of,
Right.
and then I can kind of nitpick a little bit. I programmed at Birmingham Shout in Alabama for a number of years. I was the programmer slash festival director, and that was it was a queer film festival based there, but it initially became part of Sidewalk Film Festival, which is a bigger film festival that more people have probably heard of. And we got some pretty awesome premieres and like Birmingham Shout, for at least while I was there. This is no shade on them now, but at least while I was there and I was treating it like it was a fully fledged individual festival, we were starting to catch some pretty good traction. Like we were getting world premieres that I can't believe we got. We were getting a lot of buzz in like the queer festival circuit. Like it really was becoming sort of a force in the queer festival world. Once I left, I can't say that they kept that momentum going, and I'm not
Right.
giving myself credit by that for any reason. I just think that, I mean, and I don't care if this comes across in this order. I think I frankly cared more about that aspect of it than they do currently. Um, but that those were programs I was really proud of. We world premiered my buddy Stephen Cohn out of Chicago, who's an incredible filmmaker who did Wise Kids, Henry Gamble's Birthday Party. We premiered his film Black Box, which is something I'm really proud to have done. We premiered a couple of Dale Shores, who I've mentioned previously. We were talking about Olivia Newton-John on a recording of my podcast. We did Blues for Willowdene, which was this great film with Beth Grant and Octavia Spencer. But then the year that I programmed for LA Film Fest, I was really proud of that year. Like we programmed me and my friend Heidi Honeycutt, who runs Etheria Film Night on Shudder. We were the programmers that year, the final year of LA Film Fest, and we programmed the horror competition. And we played some great films like Thriller, which was a Blumhouse film. We did Ghostlight. Just a lot of really cool horror films, like indie, like upper scale indie horror films. I'm really proud of that program. But I mean, then again, like I don't generally put out a program if I'm not proud of it. Like
Right.
if I'm putting it out and I'm not proud of it, then I shouldn't be putting it out. But then again, like, look, I don't program for Seattle Queer Film Festival, really. I mean, I have input, but we have a festival director who's amazing who does the programming. But I think our program this year for SQFF, I'd rival it with any queer festival program in the country. I would say it rivals any one of them. Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite thing to do is like build a schedule and like, build out a film schedule. It's my favorite thing to do in the world.
I'm about to do what a lot of people that have channels like this, or just film fans in general that love horror and genre and cult cinema and stuff like that. It's almost October, so one of the things I'm looking forward to is participating in my annual Let's Make a Calendar for October, that I can watch a bunch of new to me horror that I've never seen. And the way that I can small scale program for myself is great, and I've found that it has this impact, which clearly somebody in your shoes, you must feel on such a larger scale, because you are literally shaping the taste of potentially thousands of people. And while that sounds like a lot of pressure, I can't imagine some of the even larger scales, like studio heads and these physical media labels, like all the films behind me, the way that they are literally curating curating taste for potentially thousands of buyers. Do you have anything in your past where somebody is, professed how much your program has affected them, or
Oh,
maybe led to just some amazing experience?
oh yeah. I mean, like I when I started programming Birmingham Shout, I sort of assembled at the time what I honestly thought was was like a dream team of queer filmmakers. And at the same time, it was, and I'm thinking of folks like Nathan Adloff, who directed Miles, and Nate Margaret, Stephen Cohn, who I mentioned earlier, Morgan John Fox from Memphis, the late, great Ash Christian, who was a good friend who passed away a couple of years ago, who directed and produced a lot of incredible films. Like, we all kind of merged together around the same time, right when all of them were starting to take off. And they were filmmakers that I brought in. They were jurors. It was this great little community that we built up around that. And it forged a lot of relationships. Like, because of that, like, Ash ended up producing Nathan's film, and and like all these people started working together and like creating all of these, like Nathan ended up working with Morgan, and they worked with Adam Wingard on a film. And it's just this whole thing of like these interconnected. And those are my favorite things that happen in a festival, is when you can bring people together and then you can watch them go work together. And like, that is honestly the most exciting thing in the world for me, because when I'm doing a festival, I think a lot of festivals focus on their audience. And I think obviously you have to focus on your audience, but I don't think a lot of festivals put enough attention on their filmmakers. And that's something that I've always done and been really proud of, is that I try to make sure any festival I'm a part of, that the filmmaker experience is literally second to none. Because that's where you really generate buzz, is by filmmakers coming to your festival. Oh, this is an awesome festival. I'm going to tell these people they need to submit, or I'm going to submit. You bring someone in when they're young with a short film, they're going to be more keen to come back to you when they've got a kick-ass feature film. And like, it's building those relationships, which I think is so key. But yeah, all those early days, I think about just all of the crazy things that happened out of that, and that created all these little tangential projects. Like, I'm really proud of that. But yeah, I've had people come up to me many times when they watched a film and they're like, thank you for programming this. Like, this movie is incredible. Like this, or I mean, I don't want to say that I've ever had someone come and say this film changed my life, but like,
right.
As someone who has had films change their life, it happens all the time. And, but that's obviously that's why most programmers do it. Like, you program it for those little, trickling amounts of praise that you get here and there. Like, that's kind of why you do it. You certainly don't run a film festival or program a film festival for the fucking money. Because if you're doing it for the money, you are running around in circles chasing your own tail, my friend.
Are you telling me that you're not getting filthy rich programming film festivals for the gay and trans communities?
No. No one working for a film festival is getting rich. Let's be clear.
Right.
People at Sundance aren't getting rich. Like, they might make more than a small festival, but they're not getting rich. Like, film festivals are nonprofits. They run like nonprofits. They are generally year by year. Like, it's very rare where a film festival ends its year and they're like, well, we're set for next year.
Right.
So yeah, it's a struggle. That's why I have a lot of respect for anybody who is saying, like, I'm going to make this happen, especially in smaller communities where the resources maybe aren't there like they are in a place like LA or New York or even Seattle. Like, I a lot of respect for folks in like rural Arkansas and rural Missouri and places like that who are like, oh, I want to create a film festival. Like, fuck yeah. Like, that's what we need more of.
I agree. And the saddest part about the whole festival process is it takes a person like yourself that has their ear to the ground and knows the audience, but also knows the filmmakers that will want to be involved and can curate this, this omnibus of a feeling, like a genuine vibe for either a day or a weekend or a week-long festival that is going to last and make people feel like there is an impact. So it's kind of an unsung hero situation where it all rides on sometimes one set of shoulders. And clearly, to get where you've killed it quite a few times.
I've killed it in good ways, and I've also killed it in bad ways. I've gotten through with a lot of fuck ups that I've learned from, fortunately. So I do feel like I'm in a much better position now to do something like Make Believe than I would have been 10 years ago. I could have done it 10 years ago, but I don't think I had failed enough to really do it the proper way. And I feel like I'm ready to do that now. And it's not my first time. Like, I founded a film festival in Chattanooga a few years ago called Shindig, which was a queer festival there. It was in partnership with the Chattanooga Film Festival folks. And honestly, you asked me that question earlier. that might be the proudest I've ever been of a program, frankly, because, you know, I was really proud of it. We were in a city where you would not expect a queer film festival to be, and which is my favorite place to do one. And, you know, I learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot of things, what to do and what not to do. I think that certainly informed me here. Yeah, it's just, you got to just be willing to dive in and do it. Cause like, you don't make a lot of money from it, and it's all encompassing. Like, it's a shit ton of work for a very little reward. So you've either got to be fired up and passionate about it, or it's going to make you miserable.
So if somebody is watching this and they're inspired and they're in rural Missouri or, you know, the middle of bumfuck Tennessee, and they want to do something like this on a granular level, what goes into making something a good, even like a double feature? Because obviously, like the New Bev Cinema is the most famous right now theater across the country that people, you know, people around here in Missouri are literally looking at what's going to be playing at the New Bev this month just to take a look and maybe watch some of those double features. And it's lazy sometimes to say just the same director or a sequel, or these films both feature, you know, nunsploitation, but you got to have the right flow. What is that in your mind?
Well, that's a tough answer. I mean, I think it differs from programmer to programmer. For me, it's all just about a feeling. It doesn't have to be anything that connects a film. It could just be about a feeling. Like, these two films remind me of each other. Like, a good example being, I programmed a double feature once of Field of Dreams and The Right Stuff. Now, on the surface, it's like these films have nothing in common, but they do. Like, I watch those films and I get it's Americana. Like, it's Absolutely. Like it's a feeling. It's not something that really connects them in an obvious way. It's just something where you watch them and you get similar feelings. That's how I program. A lot of people do program double features based on, you know, like what you just said, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, of course. I look at curation. Like, I feel like at least I'm going to take credit for coining the term movie mixtape with Movies with Gravy, in which I'm continuing on into a new project. But that's the way I approach things. Is like, I was a kid who grew up. I made mixtapes on cassette. I've made mixtapes on CD. I've made mixtapes on a fucking iPad. Like, now, and now I think we all do it on Spotify. But it's like, I've gone through so many different incarnations of making mixtapes, music mixtapes, as a human being. And I like sort of transferring that to film as well. And with musical mixtapes, what's it about? It's about the feeling. Like, what are you trying to convey to the person that you're making a mixtape for? Well, maybe they've broken up with somebody and you want to make them feel better about that. Like, maybe their parents have divorced and you want to make them feel better about that. Maybe you just want to create something fun for a road trip. Like, you're doing it based on feeling and how those songs make you feel and how that sort of interconnectedness works. And like, I like doing the same way with films. Like, if a film puts me in a similar wavelength with another film, I don't care if they're connected or not. That's a great double feature as far as I'm concerned.
I fully agree. I was big in the music scene when I was younger, and really curating those mixes is the exact way that I've always translated it, because it's a form of communication. You are literally telling a type of story, and not just, you know, the plot of the film. You are sending a message to somebody watching the films, and whether that message is a feeling, a vibe, or a sense of hope. I mean, with Field of Dreams and The Right Stuff, you can't watch those two films back to back and not feel some sort of inspiration.
Yeah, and it's no, exactly. Like, and that inspiration feeling is exactly it. And you know, but like I said, it differs from programmer to programmer, and that's what's great about it. Is like, it can differ and it can be different. And it's like, you know, mixtapes. You know, I used to pour a lot of time and effort into mixtapes. Like, and anytime someone would ask me the question of like, so who are you, or what do you, my answer used to always be is like, it would be a lot easier for me to just make you a mixtape. Or to like recommend 5 films for you to watch. Like, you're gonna know who I am from these recommendations a lot better than me sitting down here and like giving you a biography. Like these days, I'm like, go to my Letterboxd. Like, that'll give you a decent idea. Go to my Letterboxd, look at my list. That'll tell you who I am a lot easier than I can.
That is very, very similar to how I do things with the channel I run. I get a lot of people that ask, "Hey, these are coming up coming up for sale soon. Do you think I'd like these?" And the question always is like, "Well, what are your 5 favorite movies? What do you think are the 5 best movies ever made? What are your favorite genres?" And after I hear a couple of those answers, I might be able to steer you in the right direction. But it's kind of an art form, and it takes something special to understand people on a very interpersonal level that not everybody can grab onto. And when you're doing it for a community, I can't imagine a sense of pressure that comes with that. I'm sure it exists for sure.
Well, the pressure with this one, at least with Make Believe here in Seattle, is the audience even here? And
Right.
the answer is, I don't know. Like, I've been here a year. It's a gamble to a large degree, because I've been here over a year. I feel like I've gotten a good sense of the queer community here in Seattle, and there's a lot of overlap in the queer community and the genre community. But maybe there's a reason why there's not a big genre festival here. Maybe there's not a need for it. I can't believe that's true. Like, knowing
Right.
Seattle, I can't imagine there's not a massive, like, Pacific Northwest is already such a creepy part of the country. If you think about like Sasquatch and like all
Yep.
of these pervasive legends and stuff, and like, indigenous mythology and things like that. Like, it's already kind of a creepy part of the country. So I can't imagine there's not a big audience for it. But I'm taking a bit of a gamble. Like, will people care? And will people identify with like my version of genre? Like, what I consider genre? Because yes, it's going to be horror and science fiction and all this stuff, but it's going to be stuff that sort of tests the boundaries of what genre is to a large degree. Either like, even a filmmaker, even our main filmmaker that we're thinking of bringing in, and I'm not going to spoil who it is, who is a filmmaker that I would consider a genre filmmaker, is a filmmaker that a lot of people in the genre community probably might not have even ever fucking heard of.
Right.
Because he's not someone that you see his stuff playing at like the Fantastic Fest or the Fright Fest, even though I would argue his stuff is just as genre as what those people are doing. So it's like, are people going to, is that going to appeal to people? Like, are the people who enjoy like straight up horror films going to be enjoying going and watching something a little off the beaten path? The answer is, I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know.
And that's the sort of thing that I guess like saying scares me is a little kind of a cop-out feeling to say there. But for these massive genre festivals, you could literally be shaping the taste of like the next decade of filmmaking. If the right people are attending your festival, they're going to get a sense of, oh, this is what the community's doing. Maybe I'm going to, be led into these tastes. And now suddenly indie horror over the next 5 years feels completely different because of one festival.
Well, and you've just actually opened up a door now into a Pandora's box of conversation, which I'm going to step into freely because I don't generally shy away from it. I feel like genre festivals for a very long time, maybe since the inception of like really mainstream genre festivals, have felt a very certain way.
Right.
And it's felt very exclusive to, like, I call the nerd bro culture.
Yep.
And Fantastic Fest is my favorite festival in the world. And what I love about Fantastic Fest is that even though I do feel like they perpetuated this culture for a long time, they are always evolving. Right. And I feel like, having watched the way that Fantastic Fest has emerged from like a couple of years where they were having some controversies and they were having some issues, the way that they have walked out of that is really impressive to me, because like the people who are running that festival now, like Lisa Dreyer, who's the festival director, they're doing great work. They're trying to atone for some of the things that they've done wrong, but they're also forging a path forward. They're not going to be dominated by the controversy, which I appreciate. Right. And like, but I do think festivals like that perpetuated, and this goes back to not even just festivals, but like Ain't It Cool News and that whole bro culture, like, which has gotten a lot of those people canceled and a lot of those people run through the ground, which is why I have respect for people like Drew McWeeny and Chris Cargill, who were able to rise from that and keep a really impressive career going. But all that said is, I'm trying to do something a little different. Like, I want a genre, because I feel like genre festivals have felt exclusive to certain people. Like, they're not welcome there. And like, not all genre fans feel welcome at a place like that. And like, I know that a lot of women and a lot of marginalized communities have not felt like they have a place in genre. And I think that is so backwards. I think that is so wrong, because I think, honestly, the most exciting stuff that we're seeing in genre right now are coming from women directors, are coming from LGBTQ plus directors, are coming from marginalized communities. Like, those are the ones who are giving us the most impressive content right now. We should be trying to open up and expand those festivals to those communities. And like, this year, I see Fantastic Fest doing that in a bigger way. I want to see a different kind of genre festival where everybody is welcome, where it is not so dependent on a very certain nerd demographic, and where, cinephiles are being embraced just as much as like genre heads.
It's a great point, and it's sadly it's not just the festivals. There's a lot of people in the horror and cult community, the genre fandoms that exist kind of to be toxic, and it doesn't get talked about enough. There's so many people that will, decry that some of these people that are different than them are not deserving, or they get treated just very much, evidently much worse. But so many of our greatest films, they tell the stories of those people, and then we act like they don't exist as we go day to day to these festivals and cons, and just to not be welcoming people is such a slap in the face. I can't stand that type of action.
Yeah, it's frustrating, and I've seen change, which is good, and
Right.
but it's still there. Like, and I don't want to throw any festivals under the bus. I think there are very specific genre festivals that I could point to
Right.
that are still, I think, excluding certain people, as much as they might be trying, and not Fantastic Fest. I want to be clear about that. I do think they're doing great work, and I don't just say that because I have a relationship with that festival. I really do think they're doing a good job of trying to pull out of what kind of mired them down for a little while. But there are bigger festivals out there that I still think have a lot of work to do. And are my aspirations to be a genre festival that like defines the culture? No, I just want to create a genre festival that people enjoy, that that we can get some cool films and we can get some cool events, and hopefully people are going to latch onto it. I also, I just want to create something that I think doesn't, I mean, I have no lofty ambitions that we're going to change a paradigm or anything. I don't at all, but I do want to make sure it's a different kind of genre festival. And if we can do that, we're a success. If we can make everybody feel included, I think we're a success. And when I say everybody, I mean Black, white, Asian, queer, trans, whatever. Like, I want folks to feel like it's a festival for them. And and that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
And that shows. And I again, not much just to sound like I'm sucking up or anything, but the amount of walking the walk that you've seemingly always done to give back to these communities is, and first of all, it's ambitious because it takes a lot. But second of all, it's just morally good, and it allows me to associate myself with somebody that I know that I can be proud of working with, which nowadays is not always easy to come by.
No, look, I've worked hard over the last. I wasn't always the nice, sweet Southern boy you see before you. So I've worked hard the last few years to sort of learn from the mistakes of the past. I'll put it that way. And so I feel in a good place. Feel like I'm in a good place to create art again, which is nice. And having someone along for the ride with me is always a blast. But I've got a shit. I mean, look, hell, I still want my goal for 2023 was to direct another feature film. So who knows what all else I'm going to be trying to do in 2023.
That's a great question. I know multiple podcasts coming out from Billy Ray in the near future. But other than that, as we close out, I want to get a feel of a couple things for everybody, just to get you, on their radar a little more. First of all, this channel is usually about physical media. What's your stance on physical media, and do you collect anything like that?
Well, it's funny. Pre-pandemic, I did not own a single piece of physical media. Now, when I was younger, I had probably 5,000 VHS tapes, maybe more, I mean, more or less dependent. I just had stacks and stacks of VHS tapes. Once DVD came around, I like an idiot, I got rid of them. Like, if I still had them now, because VHS has evidently become collectible again, like I would have had a gold mine. Didn't do that, hindsight. But so then when I switched to DVDs, I had a fair, decent collection of DVDs. But then once Blu-ray hit, I was like, fuck this. I'm not collecting physical media anymore. Every couple of years, something's coming around and making my previous collection, at least in my mind, obsolete. And so I stopped collecting physical media. I've always collected vinyl. Like, I've collected vinyl since I was in high school. And so even when during that period where nobody was collecting vinyl, I was still collecting vinyl. And so I'm very proud of my vinyl collection. I started collecting physical media again during the pandemic. This is gonna make me sound like such a white privilege prick, but like I was suddenly overwhelmed with funds. Like, from unemployment, from the government, from all these places. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to start collecting physical media again. Now I'm looking over at my shelf and I've probably got, 1,000 fucking, Blu-rays and shit. And so I'm like, I've dove in head first again. And so now I'm definitely collect physical media again. Definitely not to the level that you do, but I still do collect it. And I'm generally looking for the obscure shit now.
Right.
Like I've got my collection at the point where unless it's a new release that I just really want to own, I'm looking for the obscure shit and the stuff that, that just pops in my head when there's like, oh, that film. Like that's what I'm getting now. So, but yeah, I love it. Like I miss video stores. I miss going. I mean, luckily we have a couple really great ones here in Seattle, like Scarecrow. But like I miss being able to just go spend hours looking at the shelves of a video store. So I guess I'm trying to recreate that on my living room wall.
Your love for vinyl and your love for some of these films that definitely is what has been palpable for me through a lot of your appearances on other podcasts, the way that you and I have talked with each other. That's first of all, that's why I had to send you that one vinyl record just because I knew it had to be in your collection.
Yeah.
But we've talked about a lot of boutiques, just you and I. Is there any company or maybe two that have emerged as like, man, these guys do incredible work and I love what they put out?
I mean, there's a small house called Altered Innocence, which is based in Los Angeles. It's a gentleman who may still be with Strand Releasing or may not, but Frank used to work for Strand Releasing. And I just barely know Frank. I don't know Frank very well at all. I just know him from Strand. But they specialize in like queer genre. It's kind of their specialty. And I feel like they're doing some of the best work out there. That just doesn't get enough recognition. Like even just now, they've got a re-release of Dressed in Blue. They've got a couple new films, Beautiful Beings, which is fantastic. The Hole in the Fence, which is fantastic. They've got the After Blue re-release coming out. They've got the Jack Be Nimble re-release. Like they do a lot of re-releases. They do a lot of new queer cinema, and I think their curation's impeccable.
What I've seen from them, they've put out some fantastic movies, and I always go back to, if you're looking for one to go from genre film into maybe looking at some of this queer cult underground cinema that you've never seen, Knife Plus Heart is like the perfect gateway drug to get to that other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And they first, I think, dropped on my radar. A friend of mine in 2017 directed a film named A Closer Walk with Thee, which is like a queer horror film, religious film, very low budget. We actually played it at Shindig, the festival I talked about earlier. That was one of our films that year. And it was picked up by Altered Innocence. And like no other, like where else is a film like that going to find a home? And the answer is nowhere. Like had they not picked it up, I don't know that it would have found a home anywhere. And so that's why I like them. They're out there finding those little gems and treasures that aren't for everybody, but are definitely for the audience that Altered Innocence caters to. But also, besides that, I always, Vinegar Syndrome does great work. They pick up the obscure films that I generally fall in love with. And so I'm always into what they're doing. And so those are probably the ones that get me the most excited these days. But there's so many good ones out there.
There really are. It's certainly hard to pin down. And you mentioned earlier about introducing yourself as a mixtape, and so I think we should leave this. What is your business card films? If somebody asked you what are the 5 films that make me get to know Billy Ray Brewton immediately, what are we telling them?
Well, Ordinary People, which is my favorite film ever made. I think that's the start. Pleasantville, Magnolia, Cool Hand Luke, and probably A Nightmare on Elm Street.
That is a remarkable piece of 5 films. I have not mentioned this to you yet, but I'm really stoked. Screenland Armor is a repertory theater here in Kansas City that does incredible work. They do a lot. They got a film festival here called Panic Fest that they do every year.
I know Panic Fest, yeah.
But October, they are launching on the very first day for their big horror month. I'm going to see all 8 Nightmare on Elm Street films on the big screen back to back, and it is such an experience that I long for. I can't wait.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street was the very first film I saw in a theater. I was 2 years old. My mother wanted to see it, couldn't find a babysitter, and brought me with her. So I remember nothing of it, but that was the first film I ever saw in a theater. I was obsessed with Freddy as a kid. I was such a Freddy kid. Like, even now, like I've become, I like to say that I've become more of a Jason guy as I've gotten older. Now I say I'm just like kind of straight down the middle. I think Freddy is the greatest horror creation in cinema. And that film, so much about that film speaks to me, and that whole franchise. I could watch those films any day. But all of those 80s franchises are like so up my alley, and like just so part of like what I grew up on. I grew up on those 80s and 90s horror films. And so, anyway, and I think once I announce the retro screenings that we're doing in Make Believe, I think you'll appreciate them. I think knowing what we're doing, you'll appreciate them.
I think that's all I got. Everybody, all the links for Billy Ray are in the description below. Like I said, please check them out. He is doing incredible work across almost too many venues at this point.
Not almost, too many venues. Yeah. At some point, there's going to be a great reckoning.
That is, I can't wait just to see where you're going to end up in just a couple of years. Some of the stuff on your horizon, I'm just proud to know who you are as a person. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir. That's so nice.
Anyways, as I always say, from one collector, but we got two here. So from two collectors, all of you,